Here we go. All right, so I've got this. I see I can see myself better in this one. At least my hand's better, so that's good for you guys. And I hope you can see all right. Now, if I don't know if you put it on like speaker view or something, so my picture goes up bigger. I don't know if that'll help you or not. You can try it. If it does, great. If not, we'll see. All right. So this ball of clay, it's about the size of a tennis ball, right? So a pinch pot is probably the oldest method of making pottery known to man, and that's a long time, right? So clay and people have been around. People have been making things out of clay since people started being people. You know what I mean? Like it's yeah. So this guy, one day he's like, they make all these little things once they stop. They kind of living in caves and they're making these baskets out of reeds and things. And then one guy goes down to get water out of the river, and he finds this stuff kind of like sitting on the side, like, oh, that's interesting. So he lines the clay basket with it, right? So now he's like, oh wow, this really holds water a lot better, right? So and then he's clumsy, right? So he walks over near this fire, and he trips, and the basket with the clay in it falls in the fire, and then it after he can finally reach in and touch it, it is a pot. All the reeds have burned off, and the clay is hard. So there you go. There's the history of clay in 3.5 seconds. All right, so we're gonna start by pounding this into a ball. So I cup my hands like this. Clay is really wonderful because it records history very well, right? So what it does, anything that touches it, so I have my ring on here, every time I hit it, right, that ring leaves a mark on there. So you can, I don't know if you can see that, but you can see the little mark that it makes. I'm not too concerned about it because I'm going to smooth it out anyway. Now, for me, like making pots, I prefer using the pottery wheel to hand building, but this is a good way to start. It gets really the pottery wheel is like a giant pinch pot anyway, so it's just spinning for you. Okay, so now I have a nice ball, right? And by patting it like this, you kind of compress the clay. Clay likes to be compressed, so it likes the platelets that are in there need to be squeezed together, so it becomes better. You may find the clay feel a little stiff, but as you work with it, it kind of, loosens up a little bit before it starts to dry out. Now, I will show you one more thing, since you don't know what you're doing yet. All right, so I've taken this ball out. Now, what I want to do first, before I really work on that, is roll this clay back up. So I'm going to go ahead and just roll this clay in there. So it's because as soon as you open that up, this stuff starts to dry. Okay? This is gonna be a rough how-to video, isn't it? All right. Especially because I can't hear you. Like, I'm so used to people asking me questions. I want you to ask me questions, all right? And try to say it as loud as you can, because my computer's kind of far away. I've got the volume on and up a little bit, but sometimes I have a hard time hearing you guys. All right, so now got the ball, and now it's time to turn it into a pot. So I'm gonna take my thumb, stick it into the middle. Okay, now that's technically a pot. It could contain something, right? It has walls and it has a bottom. Okay, I don't know what you can see, but all right. So now I'm gonna hold it in my hand and I'm gonna start pinching. So the motion for my hand is kind of like I'm pushing down with my thumb a little bit and pulling up sort of with my fingers. So that pinching motion is gonna move this clay around. I'm moving it just a little bit at a time. I'm not trying to do the whole thing at once. So one thing that's really important with clay is you want it to be even. When clay is even, it's less likely to break or crack during firing or drying. So you really want your construction method, which this is a pinch pot. The construction method should be, as good as possible. So you want it's starting to feel even. You can see it's got a nice little crack there. That's all right. I mean, this stuff, I could have compressed it a little better. I'm not going to worry about that because I'll fix it later. But you can see now this is starting to get better. Still really thick. We're going to get it down to the right. Also, I'm directing the clay in the direction I want it to go. I don't want to use all the clay at the top yet. So I'm working the clay at the bottom first. And I'm rotating it in my hand. I'm still doing that same pinching motion and moving it around, rotating it this way. I guess you could rotate it in any direction you want, but that seems to work better with my fingers. So I'm never trying to do too much at one time. Like I want to move it with a purpose, right? But not so that it like immediately it's like it's super thick in the bottom and then razor sharp on the top, right? So now starting to get a little better, right? It's starting to smooth out. Now I have a tendency to leave pinch pots a little thick, and I guess mostly because I'm demonstrating things for you and I go fast and I get impatient and I stop, but I could keep going and make it right. Today I think we'll make it right. I like to work from the bottom up because eventually you run out of space with your fingers. So like I can only reach so far down there with my thumb. So, and you can see sort of how my thumb's working like that. I'm just doing it like a reverse action so you can see this part. If I get this part right first, the bottom part of the pot, then I can come back and work here because I've worked all the clay up this way, and now I can start working this clay up. Anybody have anything to say? Love to hear from you.
Can you use slip for this?
Slip?
Yeah.
Nobody knows what slip is except for you at this point, right? Anybody else? I guess you kind of have an idea what slip is, but we are going to use slip. Are you talking about colored slip or are you talking about attaching slip?
Attaching slip, like to keep the clay together.
Oh, it's staying together. It's together. Now the only thing you'll see little cracks that form on the surface, but if you take your finger, you're going to smooth it out. And I'm not worried about it yet, right? Because this is not a finished pot at this point. This part's fine. It's pretty much together. It's just a little bit of separation in the clay, and I'll fix that before I get where I want to go. See, right now I'm still trying to work, and you see how because I've stayed even, the height of the pot is pretty even, right? I mean, it's height wise, diameter wise, okay, and you can direct it in too. Like I can move this clay and start pinching it, moving it in, so you can close that form up, right? So you have closed forms, right, and open forms in pottery. We're going to end up making a closed form out of this. But this particular one, this first one, is just going to be a pot, right? We're just doing this. So I really want you to feel like when you start doing this, like learn how to see with your fingers, right? So I can tell how thick this is by touching the clay. So my sense of touch is telling my brain how thick this clay is and how even it is. Like if you can feel the thick parts and the thin parts, because it all depends on how much pressure you put on this thing. But I want it to be even, so I don't want a lot of thick and thin together. So I want to make sure that I'm working it around. So you can see these cracks at the top. Again, not worried about it yet, because you can look inside and you can see that it's really nice and smooth in there, and the outside is pretty smooth. the top I can trim off and I can smooth that out too. But I'm also not I'm not pinching it quickly to the top and letting it get too thin. I do want to get it even. Now I'm making this with the idea that I'm not making a pot with this one pot. Okay, I'm making a part of a pot. So I'm gonna end up making another one. Now, at this point, I'm gonna sort of push the bottom down. The bottom is a little thick, but it's not terribly thick. I'm gonna reach in, I can make that bottom wider. Because it's been in my hand like this, it's only gonna get, so wide. But I kind of like the shape that it's forming, so I really wanna keep it. I don't wanna widen it out too much. But I do wanna go ahead and make the bottom flat, clean, and neat. So it's really important. Do anybody know what craftsmanship is? Anybody? All right, hang on. There's people waiting. I'm gonna mess up my computer here. Okay. Yeah. All right. So now, what is craftsmanship? Somebody tell me. Speak up. I know you want to talk. Somebody knows. All right. Craftsmanship is the quality of the work you're doing. Right? So paying attention to the tiny little details, that's important. Right? Especially in ceramics is really important. So you want to be a good craftsperson. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that you can't make things that are crazy and rough, right? You can make things that are nice and smooth. You can make things that are rough. But they're put together with intent, right? So the craftsmanship part of it is thought out, and you know that the seams aren't going to bust open because whoever put this together was a good craftsperson, right? It's not a craftsmanship is not about style. It's about the quality of the construction. All right, so I want you guys to see that a little more. Like, look at the thickness of that. Now I'm getting closer to my optimal thickness, right? Which is about 1/4 of an inch. So I can go a little smaller in this, and that'll give me a better weight on this pot. Okay. So far, I'm really working this clay so that it's even. Okay. All right. So I've got this part down. I'm going to leave it like this because I like the form that is there. Okay, so when you're at home, this is not our end goal, right? This one pot is not it. So our next part, I'm going to make a part, and I'm going to make that part fit. I'm going to show you how to combine two parts, okay? What time we got? Got 2 cameras, people jumping in. All right, how are we going? Somebody tell me what time it is, please.
8:33.
Okay, good. We got time. All right. Grab one more piece of clay out of here for the second one. I'm going to go really fast with this one. But again, I'm recording here so you can see it'll be up on canvas, this whole demonstration. Okay? I'm going to make this one a little smaller. Maybe I won't talk as much during that. Always takes me a long time. All right, here we go. Move this out of the way. Remember, compress the clay, right? Cupped hands, making a nice ball, nice and tight. Notice I haven't used any other tools other than my hands right now at this point. So your hands are your most important tools, okay? I mean, I've told you about the wire tool, but it's not necessary because I use my hands, rip the clay off, and just take it, right? I haven't even used water on this. So that means the clay must be in pretty good shape. Eventually I will use some water and I'll use some tools, but we haven't gotten there yet. All right, so now, who wants to tell me the next step? Come on now, yell it at me. What's next? I've got a ball.
your thumb in it.
Poke my thumb in it, absolutely. Okay, now I'm going to start to pinch in that same direction. So my goal now is to get this rim to fit this one on, and I'm going to attach the two together. So I'm going to work fast. Slow me down if you have a question. Remember, tomorrow when you're working on this, like, I need to see what you're doing. So I feel like you guys can see me okay with this, and you're going to be able to watch the demo again. So I should be able to see you too, but I hope. Because usually, like in a classroom, when you guys are in a studio, like I would be walking around, like, paying attention to each one. And you may not even think you have a question, but you have a question because I walked by and saw something and showed you something, right? So it's going to be, we'll have to figure it out, but it'll work out. Okay, so still, inside's looking good, right? Outside staying even, trying to really move that clay around from the bottom first. All right, so let's check where we're at with this one. Okay, so that's, right now that's too small, right? Because this is wider than that, so I've got to take this out further. So I'm going to start pinching this clay out a little further. I need like a video studio, that would be. All right, now for the happy little trees, right? You guys still adding to the discussion? Hopefully by now everybody should have already done it. Okay, you can see now the openness of this, right? So it's starting to become an open form. I'm getting a lot closer, almost there. Again, not worried about the little stretch marks on the clay, that's fine. That's gonna be normal. You just work around it when you get to the point. But if you're always trying to fix those, that's all you're gonna do is fix cracks. Okay? Work with a purpose and then clean it up after. Okay? But if you get to past the point of no return, it's gonna really crack. Like, it's gonna be so thin that you can't attach anything to it, right? Things have to support each other. So this part should be lighter than the base a little bit. Also, like when I close these together, there's not going to be a hole in it, right, until I put one. So that air that's inside there, that's going to act like a form. So forms are great in pottery because they help hold the clay where it needs to be. So when I'm ready to cut a hole in it, like I can let it sit a little bit. And if I don't put a small hole in it, it could crack, but I'll put a tiny little hole in it, but there'll be enough air in there that keeps these pieces together. All right, this one's actually, I kind of like how it looks on the inside. I should just keep it like a pinch pot and do some stuff on the outside, but I'm not going to. All right, okay, so this is why I didn't worry about these seams. Okay, so I'm close enough here that I'm gonna attach these two together. So you can see now that open form is becoming a closed form, okay? So I'm gonna get a fork. Plastic fork will do, right? So let's say if you don't remember much of anything today, I want you to remember how to do this. Okay, using that fork, this is called scoring. Remember that, scoring. It's like scored a touchdown. Scoring in the clay. Okay, so you see how I've gone in different directions, it's making a scratched up pattern. right? I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. So anytime you attach two pieces of clay, right? This is the knowledge that you take with you, right? You always score the two pieces of clay. You know, as somebody who's been working with clay for a long time, I've cheated a few times, right? And not scored. And every time I did score, like I was never disappointed, right? But the few times I didn't, like sometimes you get away with it, sometimes you don't, right? So I've had things pop off and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't score. 10 times out of 10, when I look at your work, like if things are apart, I can pick out where it wasn't scored, okay? So that's what that means. Score that, and you also have to slip. Okay, I think, who was it that was talking about slip? Was that Evelyn?
Yes.
Okay, so now's the time, right? I'm not actually slip is watered down clay. This is clay, right? So I can take some water from my bucket here. So when you guys are working at home, like you need to make sure that you got a good place you can work, that you can clean up, and keep a bucket of water or a bowl. Remember I showed you these? Something like this, right, with water. So that's where your fingers will go, that's where the clay will go. All that stuff is important, right? So you can see the outside, like this is changing color. The water is not clear anymore, right? That's slip, okay? So I'm making slip on the pot at this point, okay? Now I'm gonna do the other side. So you score both sides, you slip both sides. And like I said, sometime later today, after I put this demo through my YouTube machine, and I'll put it on Canvas. So it'll be under the assignment, and I'll explain more about the assignment in just a second. All right, so now I've got scoring, I've got slipping. Now I can put them together. Now it's gonna be a little off, but I just wanna put a little bit of pressure on it because I wanna keep as much as of that form that I want on there. All right, so I just need to put a little bit of pressure down. Again, so far, what tools have I used? My fingers, right? My hands, a fork, and I've used some water. So not a lot. Okay, so that's starting to take shape a little bit. All right, now this is what I was talking about this tool with you the other day. Like using an old gift card or an old expired, let me rephrase the expired gift card, right? You can use this like a rib. So a rib probably at one time was actually a rib. All right, now we have them in plastic, metal, wood. So what I'm doing is, you can see I'm kind of working the clay back and forth along the seam, okay? I'm moving over to this camera just a little bit so you'll see it better when you watch the video. All right, now to answer a few questions that I think I had before with on some emails. Some of you didn't pick up your clay. It's still here. I would get it today because tomorrow I want you actually doing this in class, okay? Today is me talking a lot and doing it, but tomorrow is you actually doing this. Now, what we're gonna do, so this assignment is not just making a pinch pot, right? I don't want that to be your assignment, right? I've seen, they always kind of look the same. But I want you to actually make a pot out of pinch pots. Who knows what that means? Yeah, we're gonna combine several pots. We're gonna actually try to do five pinch pots to make a more significant pot. Not that a pinch pot is bad, right? I just think you can do more, right? And I like the results. I've done this before with the beginning class, and I like it a lot better than just you making some pinch pots and playing with clay, right? I want you to you start thinking about how to put things together, right? Actually, I'm liking this better than I did with this. Now, you'll probably need more of a plan than what I have. My plan was to put 2 pots together to show you how, right? I'm gonna hang on to this, and I'll finish it with you tomorrow probably. But as we get along, like I'll start doing it kind of step by step with you. But and things change, right? Sometimes your plan changes and alter. That's what art's all about. When you're using these tools, right? You see how the clay kind of builds up on it. Take the clay, put it in your bucket. Remember that clay water and all that clay. So look how smooth that's getting, right? It's a good thing I didn't worry about all those little cracks, right? So the clay is here. If you did not get it on Friday, you need it. You need to get over here. I'll put it back outside my door again. Right now it's sitting inside. Okay, so I don't like that seam. I could take some of this clay that I'm scraping off and put it on there, but I'm gonna try to roll it. So sometimes my table can be a pretty good tool. See, now right here looks great, right? Right here, not so much. All right, my table is made out of concrete. You probably don't have a concrete table at home. You need to get either newspaper or another trash bag to work on, right? That's gonna make everybody at your house a little happier, okay? And then for me, when I'm finished, I don't have to wad up the newspaper, but I can, if I have a lot of clay chunks, I don't have a lot because I haven't produced a lot of waste with this, okay? So I can take my sponge and wipe it down. Not creating a lot of dust, right? So my sponge is damp. It's not like soaking wet. Wipe it down. And you may have to do it more than once because you can see the clay coming off on there. But if you let it sit and dry, if your table's shiny or whatever you're working on is shiny, clay leaves kind of a film. So you have to come back with a paper towel and wipe it down. And it should be fine, okay? Clean all your tools in your bucket. Don't clean them in the sink, okay? Clean them in your bucket. Take your bucket outside, dump it in. Dump it outside, okay? Right? We don't want any of your clay going in there. Okay, any questions so far? I'm gonna go ahead and stop